A good martial artist does not become tense but ready. Not thinking yet, not dreaming. Ready for whatever may come. When the opponent expands, I contract. And when he contracts, I expand. And when there is an opportunity, I do not hit. It hits all by itself.
Enter the Dragon might be said to have been the film that introduced Kung Fu to the Western world. But the art that introduced Bruce Lee to Kung Fu is called Wing Chun. Virtually every form of Chinese Kung Fu, including Wing Chun, traces its history back to this location, the legendary Shaolin Temple. Surrounded by mountains, the Shaolin Temple has roots in China going back over 1,500 years. The original training area of the temple has deep indentations in its stone floors, a result of hundreds of years of absorbing stomps during martial arts training by the thousands of monks who have lived and died here over the centuries. A forest of pagodas just outside of the temple complex is comprised of the tombs of many of these monks. Children begin training as young as 3 or 4 years of age. The typical regimen of a Shaolin student has them awake at 5:30 a.m. and start training. Throughout the day, they continue to train and have classes, only breaking for meals. The day lasts until about 8:30 p.m., rain, snow, or shine. Wing Chun instructor David Peterson, an Australian who now teaches out of Malaysia, has come to Shaolin with 2 of his students to explore the legendary roots of his art.
The legendary history of Wing Chun suggests that a group of people wanted to rebel against the government because at the time China had been overrun by the Manchus, who'd taken over from the Han Chinese, and they defeated the Ming dynasty and set up their own Qing or Manchu dynasty. And the Chinese were not happy being conquered by a foreign race. They saw the Manchus as not Chinese and therefore not good enough. They're basically like bandits and heathens. So the Chinese secretly started organizing rebellion groups, and it's believed that one of those groups was deciding that the best way to overcome the Manchus was to develop a form of fighting that was more efficient than the systems that were already in place, because it could take as many as 20 or 30 years to become proficient in the classical systems, and that's taking too long. If you want to stage a revolution, you can't put it off for 30 years. So they started devising methods to develop more efficient training skills, and Wing Chun is supposed to have arose from those experiments. There's a legend that says a woman called Moi, said to be a nun, was the main person responsible, and she taught to a girl called Yim Wing Chun. According to the ladies that we've been talking to here, although nobody in the nunnery practices Kung Fu now, unlike the monks at Shaolin who still practice very vigorously, they believe that in the past there were nuns here who did practice Kung Fu. Whether or not there really was Umei or Moi, depending on your pronunciation, the nun who's said to have been the originator of Wing Chun, is a point of conjecture. Who knows, she could have been here in this building, in this location. But the legends can't be proved, and we're not sure whether the legend is true or even has a basis in truth. But in any case, there is a nunnery right on the fringe of the Shaolin Temple. So perhaps part of the story about the nun might have an element of truth to it.
Peterson's instructor was the legendary Chinese martial artist Wang Shengliang, a man who also served as Bruce Lee's mentor in the art of Wing Chun when a teenage Lee came of age in 1950s Hong Kong.
There were some very funny stories told by Sifu that Bruce would come along early because he wanted to get as much training as he could for himself. So he'd roll up at my Sifu's father's home early and sit on the step and wait until the other students arrived and then say, oh, there's no training today, Along's sick, or Along has to work back, or Along's this or Along's that. And he'd see them off and sometimes even walk them halfway down the street and escort them to the bus stop just to make sure that they went home. And then run back and wait for my Sifu to come home, or sometimes he was already in the house and didn't know what was going on outside. And it happened a few times, and Sifu started to wonder, why the heck are the students not turning up? They're all keen. Well, they tell me they're keen and then they don't turn up. And eventually the truth came out. So the next time Bruce pulled the stunt, my Sifu said, okay, come inside, never mind, they're not here, but you're here. And he proceeded to give him a fairly physical lesson. And when Bruce left that day, there were a few cuts and bruises to remember not to be so cheeky.
Both Lee and Wang's primary teacher in the art of Wing Chun was the legendary Grandmaster Ip Man, whose eldest son still teaches his father's art in Hong Kong in the exact same way that his father first taught it to a young Bruce Lee. At 89 years of age, Ip Chun possesses cat-like reflexes and, when not smoking his beloved pipe, still enjoys sparring with his senior students at the Wing Chun Athletic Association in Hong Kong.
Wing Chun 係一套以柔制剛嘅功夫。所謂以柔制剛，就係能夠用小嘅力，能夠應付大嘅力，能夠用細小嘅身材，能夠應付健碩嘅身材。
Master Samuel Kwok of Great Britain is one of Ip Chun's senior-most students and has dedicated the majority of his life to promoting and preserving Ip Man's legacy and art of Wing Chun Kung Fu. Kwok annually makes a pilgrimage to Foshan, China, to visit the birthplace of Ip Man. This year, he has brought 16 of his students with him to visit the Ip Man Museum and to train in the village where Ip Man and Wing Chun first became established.
Wing Chun, when I first came to Foshan in 1999, not many people heard of Wing Chun because we not just visiting Foshan, but we go up to the northern China, but not many people, what is Wing Chun? We never heard of it. But now, everybody in Beijing and every corner of China, everybody is looking for Wing Chun. Everybody wants to learn the Ip Man Wing Chun.
Danny Chun, who has studied and taught Wing Chun for over 40 years, represents a new breed of Wing Chun Sifu. Teaching out of Bracebridge, Canada, as well as Thailand and China, Chun looks to science, rather than tradition, to explain why this art that Bruce Lee first practiced is so effective and relevant to modern-day martial arts.
You know, you don't memorize situations. You don't put people in certain places and say, if this person does this, or when he does this, you respond this way. So it's more about understanding about how and why. How to deal with things. It means positioning, understanding your body, alignment, okay? And why? Why? Because it gives you more mechanical advantage. To me, Wing Chun is understanding a human body, how it works, how the mind works, okay? How nature works, gravity, okay? The levers, okay? All the stuff, just universal science. So once you understand that, then you can deal with the conflicts, okay? Rather than memorizing a bunch of techniques, okay? And trying to match this, you know, the current situation with what you learned in training.
Jung can basically try to attack me at any time. I don't know what he's going to do, but I just counter with reflexes. I don't have time to think about it, so it has to be done with spinal arc contact reflexes. I can attack, or I can allow him to attack, and I try to respond with a countermeasure. So that every time one of us tries to move, the other has a split second to either beat it or win the situation and take the line.
When you deal with a fight with a person, you're going to have some kind of contact. There's no way, I mean, as long as you go to a fight, there's going to be some kind of contact. You can run around for a while, but eventually there's some kind of contact. And in Wing Chun, the concept is to develop your tactile senses, to sharpen that, so that you have extra senses to understand the opponent.
The highest level of testing this is if we do it with a blindfold, so I'll ask John to come in. So if I want to find out if I can really do this, I take my eyes out of the equation. Now I can't see what's going on, I have to rely on my sense of touch. And again, I can make the attack, or I can await John's attack and see what happens. See if I can counter his method to move in. If he leaves a gap, my hands have been programmed to attack, what we call lat sao jik chong. So any mistake on my part or John's, and that will be felt and counted. It doesn't matter where he goes, I know where he is. Sense of touch takes over.
In keeping with its touchstones of simplicity, directness, and efficiency, Wing Chun does not have dozens of forms or katas for its students to practice. Instead, Wing Chun has but 3 empty hand forms, 2 weapons forms, and 1 apparatus form for a total of 6.
We learn something called chi sao, and through this chi sao we can apply the techniques from the forms and wooden dummy into the actual combat. Wing Chun is very scientific. Between 2 points, the straight line is the quickest. You don't have to be big and strong to do it.
The Wing Chun basic philosophy is of simplicity, directness, and efficiency. We always want everything to be done in such a way that we get the job done with less effort on our part and a great deal of effect on the part of our opponent. We take the shortest path whenever we can, and we always try to use our opponent's strength rather than to use our own energy, if it's possible to do it that way. We use lines of deflection instead of hard blocking, and try to counter every attack with an attack. That being the best form of defense, to attack our opponent at every opportunity.
As a practitioner of Wing Chun for over 40 years, I would say Bruce Lee was very good with his Wing Chun. So a lot of the techniques he used was in the movies were actually Wing Chun. The first one he used is the Pak Sao Chong Chun. Pak Sao Chong Chun.
What you don't see is that hand, trapping this one out the way. That's how Bruce did it in the movie.
The third one, he tricks him by going from here, and then he goes here, and that hand kind of tries to stop it, and then there you go.
不過同葉問口中，李小龍之所以成功，就係勤力。咁咪3點零鐘放咗學啦，佢就孭住個書包咁咪就行到去㗎。啊，咁啊完全經過圓洲街啊， 欽州街啊、青山道啊啲咁行去，一路行喺馬路啲，一路打去嘅，一路行嗰路打嘅，人哋話佢傻咁啊，所以李小龍嘅成功啊，呢可以理解到，係真係好近嘅。
And so when Bruce Lee's movies started coming out and we got them in quick succession, everybody wanted to know more about Bruce Lee, and it became very known to us in a short amount of time that Bruce had practiced Wing Chun under Grandmaster Ip Man. And so every kid my age at the time said, geez, I want to be like Bruce Lee. How to be the best to be like Bruce Lee? Learn Wing Chun. And so started reading up on it and trying to find information about it, and that's what drew me to the system.
And Bruce Lee himself, okay, was an exception who dedicated himself to the art as much as the ancient martial artists in modern day. That's why he became as good as he was.
I was inspired by Bruce Lee. And then I start getting into Wing Chun because that's what Bruce Lee do.
This art, it's also about life. You use it for daily use, okay? It's about how to deal with forces. And in our lives, we're always dealing with some kind of force or some kind of conflict. Whether it's, with your wife or your brothers, sisters, or your boss in business, there's always some kind of, challenges that you're gonna have to face. And Wing Chun has taught me how to yield and turn things around. Took my advantage without the person knowing. So, like Sun Tzu said, it's better for you to win over your opponent than to conquer them.
我睇係最大嘅，學永春最好嘅，最重要。收穫最大嘅係健康問題。我今年接近90啊，身體仲係好健碩，一個人都同我周圍去。我唔需要人哋日後記得我，只要記得詠春對身體有好處，已經足夠。
We're very fortunate that Wing Chun has survived into this century so that we're able to practice it and pass on the legacy. Less than 100 years ago, there were only maybe a dozen or so people practicing the system, and outside of China it was totally unknown. Two events really made a difference. The first was Ip Man arriving in Hong Kong and almost by accident becoming an instructor of the art. And of course the second one is the fact that Bruce Lee went on to become so famous in his own right, and people curious about Bruce Lee's background found out that he had indeed been a student of the Wing Chun system under Ip Man and with the mentorship of Wong Tsen Leung and some others in Hong Kong. And so with that interest in Bruce Lee grew an interest slowly but surely into Wing Chun, so that now we've got somewhere between 3 and maybe 4 million people around the world practicing the Wing Chun system in one way, one form, one style or another. So thankfully, because of those two gentlemen and others in the system who did all the hard work to make sure that it survived, we now have access to one of the most efficient personal protection systems that was ever invented.